Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. We're returning today to George Van Tassell, who was the author of The Council of Seven Lights. In a previous episode, we covered the first chapter of this book, The Missing Link, which is fascinating. And we can see the origins of the Law of One, where Don Elkins got many of his questions and understandings. And I wanted to cover the second chapter because here we discuss densities from a different perspective. This is one of the first mentions of densities in addition to George Hunt Williamson, and you can take it for what you will. This is using the 12 density model, which can still be used and has some interesting revelations about the nature of the fourth density. He is referring to a drawing oftentimes. I'll do my best to explain that. The Council of Seven Lights, Invisible Gears. Densities are the levels or grades through which creation progresses. Thought is the activating force. Thought is the image of the creative intelligence. Progression is a reward for effort expended in creative thought. Through thought, the Creator established a pattern through which all things must pass. The people of the Earth and this solar system are all in the same boat at present. There are various levels or decks in this space boat. There are visible partitions between these different levels. The first-class passengers in this solar boat are not the wealthy people nor the intellectuals of the system. The steerage is not occupied by the poor or the illiterate. Everything in this boat is mixed up. The Creator didn't make it this way. The mix-up is due to the doings of man. Earth people are dominated by individual and mass ego. Nearly everyone thinks he is better than others. Now, progression is upward, and when one looks down on another, he must lower himself to see the other. When one sees the good in others, he automatically raises himself. The Creator established densities to control these conditions. The third density, where these things exist in the triangle of confusion, is about all finished. Humans on Earth are going to have to conform to the requirements of the fourth density or take this grade over again. The requirement to pass is to live the golden rule, not to profess it or expect others to live it, but to live it individually, as you are only responsible for yourself. The Velisector system is only one of the Creator's thoughts. The Velisector system is a drawing that he is referring to with 12 circles around it, with Vela being in the middle of it, using a number of different words to indicate the different densities that are all interacting. He exclaims in this drawing that each density is a vortex. The even numbers are of positive polarity, the uneven are negative polarity. Each density is composed of many galaxies, nebula, solar systems, and planets. There are 12 densities in the system we occupy. Each of these is divided into 12 major cycles. Each major cycle is divided into 12 minor cycles. When a solar system moves out of one density into another, it is called a master cycle. The solar system that we are in now in the arc between third and fourth density. For the planet, Earth, and the solar system, this is the time of times. The Earth is culminating a minor cycle, a major cycle, and a master cycle all at the same time. This will bring about a rebalancing of the planet on new poles. When this occurs, the great earthquake written of in Revelations will take place. The first density for the Earth was when the planet only supported vegetation. The Earth's rotational speed was such that only gigantic vegetation with a germination temperature of around 110 degrees Fahrenheit could survive. When the Earth passed through the arc, or overlap between the first and second densities, it rebalanced on new poles and the massive vegetation became our coal beds of today. As soon as the Earth had established and stabilized in the second density, The space people landed animals on the planet. This has been handed down from the ancient records as the story of Noah and the Ark. The germination temperature in the second density was 104 degrees. The animals that lived in the second density were also large. They were of the mastodon and dinosaur types. The reason they became extinct when the planet passed from the second into third density was because the germination temperature in the third density was around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Many of the carcasses of these large animals are recovered today from the glaciers of Siberia. That area was tropical in the second density. In the Ark of Spey, when the Earth rebalanced on new poles, the animal with a germination temperature of 104 degrees Fahrenheit could not reproduce in a temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. After the large animals became extinct, the space people of the Adamic Confederation landed a colony of the race of man on the Earth. It was through the mating of these Adamic men people with the race of Eve, upright walking animals of high second density development, that survived the cataclysm in the Ark of Spey, that brought about the humans of the Earth. This was the beginning of the human people in the third density on the Earth. The race of Eve became extinct, except for the animal flesh contribution and destructive tendencies of humans. Humans cannot reproduce in the fourth density and will become extinct as an animal-man mergence in the first 100 years, as the fourth density germination temperature will be around 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The humans that survive through the cataclysm of the coming polar flip will gradually die off. The fourth density is not for destructive principles or humans. Those who do not conform to the requirements to emerge will be reincarnated back into the 12th phase of the third density on another planet and have to live through this mess again. The densities alternate polarity and therefore rotation. The drawing of the 12 circles surrounding a single circle shows them as viewed from the top, looking at their maximum circumference. An edgewise view would show them as spirals, one with the apex up and the next with the apex down. Our solar system is about to pass out of the maximum circumference of the third density into the maximum circumference of the fourth density. The Earth will then rotate nearly 370 days in a year. Do not confuse densities with dimensions. Densities are pressures established in changing frequencies of vibration. Dimensions are measurements. Some have mixed up dimension and density. Time is not measurable, and the absolute time can be phased in density and moved backward or forward. However, it can only be done through the 0 point between polarities. As our solar system moves through space, its progression is into an ever-increasing frequency of vibrations. Each solar system and every planet must evolve through grades, even as babies learn to crawl before they walk. The A and B lines of force pass through your body at 90 degrees to each other. The G line of infinite light centers your consciousness and separates you from all other people with a boundary of skin. As these positive and negative lines of energy pass through your body, they activate every atom and cell of your physical makeup. If the approach of these lines to this planet from out of space is interrupted by one of the other planets, as they are, then you individually are affected by the influence from the other planets. Our scientists say the moon causes tides, yet they contend that the moon has no effect on crops, people, or other conditions, that these beliefs are only superstition. The human body is over 2/3 water. Is it superstition to assume that if the influence of the moon moves hundreds of millions of tons of water in the oceans, that the 100 pounds or so of water in a person is not also affected? Everything has some effect on everything else in the universe. As you move throughout the day in an upright position, you are moving in and out of many lines of force. All of them are charged with influences not only of other planets, but from other people, various metallic objects, electronic devices, and atmospheric conditions. You feel these influences, and you may wonder how the day or year went so fast. At another time, the hours may drag. These time changes are the result of some influence acting upon you. If you work hard or run, you become heated and tired. This is the result of an increase in the number of charged lines of force you have interrupted. Through various attitudes caused by turning, bending, and motion of the limbs, heat is generated in the body because of constant changes of the angle of attack from lines of force. When you sit down to rest for a few minutes, this permits the body to absorb the energy from A and B lines of force, issuing forth from the same unchanging direction. When the structure of the body cools off because it reaches balance, this idling condition of the body motor is brought about by the fact that each atom is receiving steady motion by the same lines of force. When you sleep at night, the body becomes charged in balanced rhythmic interchange. There has been much said of one sleeping with the head to the north or east, or in a particular direction. This is not a fixed law, it varies with each individual. Each person should try the various directions. With some people, it would require that they vary direction occasionally. It is more important to sleep away from metallic objects. Coil springs are especially detrimental, so complete rest. Metallic conductors set up vortices that cause a circular motion within the straight lines of force. This is a parallelism to body activity. So instead of resting, your body is working even while you sleep. The essence of life is the same in all densities or dimensions. Life is manifested from the A and B lines of light force by the infinite G light. Life is only given form in the first density by principle of the wheel of life. All vegetation, all substance with form such as rocks, fluid, and planets maintains forms through various time stages or cycles. Each form of life in the first density contributes substance to every other form of life on all material or negative levels. All densities of life contribute to the progression of every form of life in densities beneath them. All forms of substance are alive in repetitive patterns for their particular species. Thus, substance, through life, repeats its cycles from dust to dust. Life is the carrier of progression in its eternal and endless spiral. Thus, the stages are positive or negative or both, when they are in balance. The spiral of life, also called the caduceus, is symbolized by two serpents. The negative, receptive, or female is only given desire by its opposite, the positive, projective, or male counterpart, and vice versa. These symbols are not zigzag in form, they are spiral. They are centered and separate by the staff of life, around which they twine ever upward through the infinite intelligence. The first density on Earth, consisting mainly of vegetation, is of both polarities. The dividing line is the surface of the Earth. The positive projective part of the plant is attracted into the dark negative soil to provide minerals and moisture, so the receptive female portion above the surface may bloom in her fullness. This is the reason why a water witcher's twig, taken from a living plant, can indicate water. It is actually a living instrument. Like magnets, when they are cut, the positive end remains in the same direction. Therefore, they are held upside down in order to function. As all things beneath the surface of the soil are of negative polarity, and since survival is the strongest desire, the twig wants to assume its natural polarity position and is attracted positive end but first to the water of life. For the same reason, when you spend long periods of time in the positive sun, you require more water, which is negative, to quench your thirst, which is the result of unbalanced light force. Every cell in the vegetation is life in form. Maintaining a still greater life in form as an animal eats the first density stationary life form, vegetation, it gives to its motion. The substance confined to the place where the seed dropped can now move around, as it has been assimilated by and raised to the second density of life in motion. The same progression of substance takes place where you eat the flesh of an animal. Humans, being both animal and spirit, are of the third density, life, motion, and consciousness. You, as part of the eternal pattern of life in form, give to the animal substance the ability to express and recognize the spirit, although all forms of life progress within their own densities. Much confusion has been started by the theorists who try to tie the densities together. Darwin tried to show the evolution of man from the apes. There is no missing link except breeding. As our solar system has progressed through space, it crossed on August 20th, 1953, from the third density to the fourth density. Our planet has emerged from the frequency of the third density. Everything on this planet must now begin to conform to this higher frequency pattern. We are on the verge of witnessing a cyclic planetary house cleaning. All things in this solar system are going to be brought into balance. The space people of the Adamic race, serving as agents of God, have, through the centuries, followed a pattern of cycles in bringing their qualified teachers to the peoples of Earth. Approximately every 2100 years, the spacecraft of the space people have landed one of their divine mothers on Earth to give birth to a true son of God. As far as the records go, they have all been virgin mothers. These cycles are determined by the Adamic people according to cosmic planetary time. A minor cycle is approximately 2100 years, or 1/12 of a major cycle. A major cycle is about 26,000 years, or a complete cycle of the precession of the equinox. These cycles vary in time either way, plus or minus according to nutation. During the last major cycle, the space people landed 12 teachers. The teacher called Jesus was the 12th and the last of the sons of God in the past major cycle. The policy is always to return the last teacher of each major cycle to begin the next cycle. The importance of today is emphasized by the fact that we are not only on the pinnacle of a minor cycle, but also amidst a major and master cycle at the same time. This brings about a balancing of the planetary forces that the space people call the Father's house cleaning among his planets. However, in the Bible it is called the time of the great earthquake. Noah walked with God because he was one of the space people who came to the earth in the Ark of Noah. In the Bible, Noah is confused with Noah. Noah was a man and Noah is the Ark of Noah. It was in the Ark of Noah. And when he says Ark of Noah, that is referring to a density, that the animals were brought to Earth. The space people landed the various animals that could survive in the second density germination temperature. Of course, there was a flood during the time of the Ark of Noah. The Bible is correct when it said all the water was in the firmament in the first density. That was why the vegetation was so thick in the first density. The moisture would condense and water the vegetation at night and rise as fog in the daytime. When the Earth flipped on its poles in the Ark of Noah, the rotational speed changed, and the new temperature of the Earth being less, the waters condensed and fell from the atmosphere and flooded the land. The Bible says the waters were 15 cubits deep, about 27 feet, in Genesis 7:20. So the story in the Bible of the Ark and its animal cargo is a badly twisted version of a man and a boat. The size of the biblical ark is given at 300 cubits long and 50 cubits wide and 30 cubits high, about 525 feet by 88 feet wide by 53 feet high. Imagine caging a pair of each kind of living thing in an area that large. And don't forget, they needed sufficient food carried to feed them for 40 days. Then the story gets further off. They confused the accurate ancient records with another ark. This was when the Bible story puts Noah's sons in the same boat. The animals were landed in the Ark of Noah between the first and second densities. 312,000 years later, Ham, Shem, and Japheth were landed on Earth between the second and third densities in the Ark of Spey. Noah's sons were not individuals either. The race of Ham were the black people, the race of Shem were the white people, and the race of Japheth were the yellow people. The various tribes that descended from these three original colors of people that were colonized on Earth by the space people is listed in Genesis chapter 10. Each race is pure in its own color, and the universal law reads each seed after its own kind. In all the creations on the earth, each flower, tree, animal, and all the nature follows this law, except humans who were given the right to choose. Humans were given the intelligence to raise themselves, yet humans are the only creatures that violate this law. O man, though I am one, I am also many. Though I center the individual light of each of you, also are the one of me. I live each sensation. I live every expression. I am the motion of thee. O man, consider each thing you do to me. For when you strike one of my parts, I feel the blow. And when you cast a thought of love, I absorb the love of you, and I return it too. When idle mind leads thee to tear the reputation of another down, you have only lowered your thought of me, and in turn have lowered yourself. Realize that I am always with you, always, the silent, unseen companion to your every action, the recipient of your every thought. I love to express myself through you in ways that bring me joy, in paths that reach the hearts in gratitude. Help me to express the oneness of each of us, that I may center all my parts in unity of me and thee in harmony and love, that none shall know the pain and sorrow and heartbreak you did express yourself. I gave thee light of life, that you might extend my actions, that others might feel the joy of me, that are in darkness bent, who are trouble-blinded and cannot see that I am there. Extend the progress I have brought into being by lifting up another, that I may feel the twofold expression expressed in grateful thanks. Though I am stillness, my parts all move in me. My rest is in contrast, or motion could not be. Extremes establish the boundaries beyond which man cannot go. Though I am boundless, man is bound in being of me by individuality. Man I have created so I may extend myself through motion of the parts of me, so I will not be bound within the stillness of my infinity. So that is the short chapter, chapter 2, from the book The Council of Seven Lights by George Van Tassell. To know more about George Van Tassell, check out my previous episode. I just found it interesting, the discussion of the densities from this unique perspective, given so much longer ago than the law of one. I find it interesting to discuss this idea that we can see the dinosaurs dying as they moved from the density because the temperature of germination was different. So we had large creatures developing in that density. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I find that an interesting idea to explore. What we have learned from the law of one material and the adjacent materials that influenced it is that it appears that we are moving through different densities. And these densities we're learning to understand as best as I can explain it to you. By moving into a higher density, it's a density of information and it's a density of complexity. Just like going from 3rd grade to 4th grade, everything gets harder. So we're moving into a higher dimension that has a greater amount of information and complexity to it. It's interesting. It's consistent with the law of one material that says that humans will not survive in the 3rd density environment. Dolores Cannon says that is different. There are some channeled entities that have indicated that humans might be able to make it through and transform. And it's also indicated in the raw material that there are people on the planet that have 3rd/4th density bodies, meaning they have the access to the 4th density body within the 3rd density. So there's going to be a group of people that will transform. In my own experience, as I had an event recently at the Reality Con, as we explored the idea of the social memory complex and activating a social memory complex, the density is in relation to the complexity of the new nature of the soul. The soul begins as just body, and then it starts to develop the mind. So it's the mind-body complex. And then in third density, it develops the spirit, the mind-body-spirit complex. And then in fourth density, this mind-body-spirit complex also attaches to a larger grouping of individuals, creating a mind-body-spirit social memory complex, where groups become living entities. There's so much more to it, and I find it interesting to explore all the material, even if it contradicts. Sal Rochelle says something differently about fourth density. Dolores Cannon documented some different information. There is Bashar, who talks about it in a different way. What may be possible is that all of them are correct. One thing that's happening as we move into the fourth density is it's multidimensional. So there are multiple different dimensions. Each of these may be different, all interacting at the same time, which is part of the complexity, the nature of it. We may have multiple different versions of fourth density. But I find it very interesting, and I want to share it with you. I'd love to get your impressions of the Council of Seven Lights material, and we'll definitely return to it in the future. In any case, you can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. Welcome to The Reality Revolution.